You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. I'm Dr. Joshua Lindell. I'm a paleoanthropologist studying Neanderthals, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I'm a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, paleogeneticist, interested in phylogenetics of felids and Pleistocene extinctions.
And today we are reviewing Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women. And I think this might be a quick one.
Yeah, not much to say.
Yeah.
It would have been fun to make, though, I think.
Did you read about how it was made?
No.
It would have been fun for 3 or 4 separate film crews to make independently across about a decade of time.
What?
would have been fun to edit together in 1968.
Yeah, it's like
It did not look like they put that much time and effort into it.
No, it's like the scraps that were recycled from the previous recycling of the original Russian film, which I think the Russian film must have been quite interesting because the special effects for, what was it, 1950 something?
So this, to clear up what we're talking about here, this movie is mostly a re-edit of a Russian film called Planeta Bur, or Planet of Storms. And that one is from 1962.
Okay.
That title makes way more sense for the movie.
Mm-hmm. And it is largely the same movie. All of the shots with the astronauts on the planet are from Planet of Storms. It is a movie where they go to Venus, as they do in this movie as well, so it's essentially the same plot. All of the prehistoric women that we see on this planet, those are the only original footage that were added to this movie. And so we have Planet of Storms from 1962, and then 1965, we have the American cut, which re-edits Planet of Storms and is called Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. Still no women in it yet. And then in 1968, we have this movie, Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, where they've recut that American 1965 recut, and they've added the shots of the prehistoric women. Mm-hmm. And as director Peter Bogdanovich says in a quote on Wikipedia, in order to get it through the production, said they needed to have more women in it. So they just went out and filmed some random stuff with some sexy women and cut it rather inexplicably into this movie about exploring Venus. Yeah. And this is the result that we've got. But we also have footage from another movie called where did I have this page open?
There was nothing prehistoric about the planet. I mean, that name doesn't even make sense because it doesn't exist in prehistory, right? Like yeah. I don't understand.
It's got dinosaurs.
Yeah, kind of.
I can't find the name of the other movie I was looking at here, but some of the shots of spaceships early on are from a different movie from 1958 or 62 or something. So there's footage from like 3 or 4 different movies all cut together in this one with a little bit of new footage as well. So it's a crazy mishmash. And then, of course, we have the narration from Peter Bogdanovich across the whole thing, which was added in because an early cut of the movie made no sense. And so they added the narrator to it to help the audience understand what's going on. So who wants to summarize this movie for us?
Well, I can do it, but advance warning.
Make it long-winded so that we can get an episode out of this one.
It makes no sense. So you start off with a very kind of somber and serious voiceover, which it must be Peter Bogdanovich, about, you know, how man's destiny is in the stars. That very kind of 1950s sci-fi style of how, you know, we're going to other planets, everything's going to be great. We're going to be the colonizers of these new worlds, etc., etc. And there's a little bit of kind of science fact. So he talks about some of the missions. You mentioned the Apollo mission. We see some kind of testing of new space wheels for use in space. What this bit at the beginning reminded me of, I don't know if any of you guys seen the classic John Goodman film called Matinee. I may have mentioned this on the podcast before.
Oh.
It's a film about a film, and John Goodman plays this like Alfred Hitchcock wannabe director who's selling his film Mant, which is about a radioactive human ant cross, which causes havoc. Very like some of the films that we've already watched on this podcast. But he's very serious, and he talks about how Mant is science fiction based on science fact. That's very much the vibe I got from this, like not a voiceover right at the beginning. And yeah, so we're also kind of given some meandering, nonsensical narration about how Venus was named after the goddess of love, blah blah blah. In the distant future of 1998, that's when we had our first trip to Venus.
Yeah.
that may be a little bit emotional. Just,
I know. Yeah.
These guys had such high hopes for the future, and in 1998, nah, we weren't going to Venus. But you can sort of tell it's Soviet roots in that you have the first mission, everyone dies. The first mission to Mars, they get hit by a meteorite, and absolutely everyone dies, and that's just how it is. The next voyage is with two men, Sherman and Kearns, and also their robot, who's called John, because why not? I mean,
Robot John
is just why give him a futuristic name when you can just call him John? He's kind of in the style of Robbie the robot from Lost in Space and Forbidden Planet. He's just a guy in a suit with some kind of antenna and blinky light that talks in a monotone. And the two men, Sherman and Kearns and Robot John, they stop off at Space Station Texas to refuel, which is quite neat. There's a little kind of model with flashing lights. But then things go wrong. So when Sherman and Kearns and Robot John get to Venus, they sort of crash, and the area is strange. That's what they say. The area is strange. Of course, they're on a different planet. And they've gone kind of radio silent. So instead of actually investigating why all of their rockets to Venus tend to go wrong, Mission Control, which is confusingly called Marcia in this film, which I read was because in the previous films, a woman called Marcia was a big plot point. So they had lots of dialogue referencing Marcia. So they just made that the Mission Control. Anyway, these three poor schmucks who are next in line for the death ship to Venus, they get kind of called up straight away. They blast off. Their ship's very different, though. What I noticed is that Sherman and Kearns and Robot John's ship has very nice reclining chairs. So they get like to lie down when they're blasting off. Whereas these backup guys, who are I think called William, Hank, and Andre, they'd have to sit upright the whole way. So it's a totally different ship. Anyway, it kind of cuts back to Sherman and Kearns, and they're on the planet, cut off, but they find dinosaurs, which they are like dino men. It's not very clear. They're like guys in rubber dinosaur suits. And of course, they immediately shoot them with
like
pistols.
mini Godzillas.
Yeah, like mini Godzillas, or the Chew-It monster. But of course, they immediately shoot them with their pistols, which they've taken on their space journey, and throw rocks at them. Let's see what else happens next. So the new guys, the William, Hank, and Andre, their ship goes okay. Everything's fine. They land happily on the planet. They look out the window and find formations of weird rocks. I mean, these guys are not very well prepared for a mission to Venus, it seems, if that's what they're talking about. They turn on the microphone to listen to what's going on outside, and they hear a really weird, spooky kind of siren sound, which sounds like, a woman singing. And immediately one of them says that it must be a woman singing, even though they're on Venus. But they get suited up into their spacesuits, they go outside, and almost immediately Andre gets got by a carnivorous plant, which looks a bit like the Sarlacc from Return of the Jedi. So it's got tentacles and a big mouth. It was quite a cool creature design, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But the two guys sort of follow and rescue him, and the tentacle monster plant has a defense mechanism. So they've kind of thought a little bit about their monster design when these two guys threaten it with their pistols. It has a nice kind of protective leaves that cover up its sensitive mouth parts. So that was pretty cool. They get a picture of it after kind of bashing it to get Andre back from its tentacles. Then they get a message from Mission Control, from Marcia, which says they've spotted Kieran's and Sherman, so they've got to go in their space car. And their space car is pretty cool. It's like a little bubble car with no wheels that can float like a land speeder. And while they're driving to the spot where Sherman and Kieran's have been seen or detected, they go past some very static rubber dinosaurs. At this point, we cut back to Robot John and Sherman and Kieran's, and they're at a waterfall. For some reason, they've decided to go to a waterfall with a robot. Not the smartest idea.
The robot tells them this is a bad idea.
And they don't listen. He says he doesn't like water. But they find a cave. They're kind of, I think they're running out of oxygen or something. They're not in a great way. They start babbling incoherently about the importance of mathematics. That's when you know people are kind of shorting out, is when they start talking about maths. Anyway, cut back to the guys in their space car. They hear the voice again. This time they're beside the sea. One of the guys says, "Almost sounds like a girl." And then the other guy replies, "Or a monster." Same difference. And then we get the first shot of the prehistoric women of the planet. So the camera passes some blonde mermaids with, classic shell bras. They're mostly blonde, but there is one ginger, all white. But there's a ginger there for diversity. And they can talk to each other telepathically, because of course they can. And they're also wearing very tight trousers. And they just jump into the sea.
A hippie mermaid outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. They've got tan lines. They've also got eyeliner and mascara on as well. It's so 60s, it hurts. So they telepathically decide to go into the sea. I don't know. Maybe it's just an excuse to get their clothes wet for the viewers. I'm not sure. But we got another classic 50s and 60s science fiction line where the guys in the space car say, "To a man of science, anything is possible," which is great. The girls, the prehistoric women, are in the sea. They're catching and eating raw fish, Gollum style, and we see them kind of eating them. Then a very rubbery pterosaur appears in the sky while they're eating their fish, and they telepathically decide that this is their god, and he's angry with them for the fact that their planet's been invaded by these random guys. Let's see what else happens next. Robot John is radioing to the guys in the space car because Sherman and Kieran are in trouble. The guys in the space car get Robot John to open their helmets and feed them a tablet and water and then close the helmet again. And Robot John is so unprepared for this task. He's got the biggest metal sausage fingers, which is just not equipped for delicate tablet work. But somehow he manages to pick up one tablet, throw it into the guy's mouth, and give him some water. And that's what he needed to stop talking about mathematics. My notes here just say that Robot John has crappy hands. But yeah, that's it. And then, meanwhile, the pterosaur, the prehistoric woman's god, attacks the space car, and they have to use their astro gun, which is mounted to the top of the car, to kill it, which they do. And they don't even think about taking a sample. They've just killed a dinosaur on a different planet, and they couldn't give less of a shit about this thing. But then we discover that their space car is also a submarine, so they're worried about more attacks. So they go into the water in their submarine space car, and there's lots of fish and terrapins and stuff. And they immediately find one of the guy that seems to just not be a scientist at all. He's the one that thought he was hearing women's voices. He's like, all these cliffs are in even rows like streets. He's just seeing things everywhere. So he thinks he's found like the mermaid's village. Meanwhile, the prehistoric women mermaid find the dead pterosaur, which is so rubbery, it's hilarious. It's just like they lift it up and it's like lifting jelly. And they are sad that their god has been killed. Meanwhile, underwater, the guys have got out of their space car. Their multi-purpose spacesuits also work as diving suits. They find a statue of the pterosaur. So like they find a statue with ruby eyes of the pterosaur that they just killed. And so they kind of surmise that they found the village of some people who maybe are gone, who worship this pterosaur. Mm-hmm. And then it cuts back to the prehistoric women. One of the blonde ones, I don't know if she has a name. Certainly they're very much interchangeable. She gets a special hat for some reason, and then swears vengeance on the guys that have killed their god. The backup guys feel like they're being watched. He finds a nice rock on the ground, which he picks up and puts in his bag. The prehistoric women are still carrying the dead pterosaur, and they take it to the sea and then just chuck it. And then they do a telepathic ritual to summon lava and a volcano. So that's very much a bingo right there. How they do that telepathically or telekinetically, I don't know. But just as the backup guys have found Sherman and Kieran's and Robot John, the volcano erupts, and so there's lots of very low-tech lava bubbling all over the place. Sherman and Kieran's decide, fuck it, it's only Robot John. Yes, he's got a Christian name and first name, but he's totally expendable. He can carry us across the lava. So he kind of gives them fireman's lift across the lava, but halfway across, he realizes his self-preservation circuits are going to kick in, and he's going to yeet those guys into the lava just to preserve his robot self. Which you think that it says that like Kieran's was the guy that invented Robot John, so you think he'd know about this self-preservation circuit and realize that getting him to carry them across 1,000-degree lava was going to be a problem. Anyway.
Yeah. Like just put in like a save yourself except in the case of having to throw me in lava to do so. Right? There should be.
Absolutely. Asimov's
code for
laws
that.
of robotics.
Yeah.
So they have to unplug his circuit before one of them gets dropped into the lava. And that once they've done that, John carries them across. The three other guys who are trying to get to Sherman
car
and
come and get them, right? The friends in the
Yeah, they come in the car to pick them up. And they just abandon Robot John. Robot John gets he's the only one that actually is useful on this whole trip. And they just abandon him to the lava, which really sucks. There's also some great lines where they're trying to get away from this lava, which is coming rapidly towards them. And one of the guys won't leave. He's like, but look at the magnificence. I was like, well, man, it's a volcano. We've got those on Earth as well. And at this point, I noticed that, all the prehistoric women have eyeliner. And my note says it must be waterproof, I guess, that they spent all that time in the water. Right. So the space cars saved them. John's left behind. John melts into the lava like Gollum. They head back to their rocket, but they're low on fuel because of the extra passengers they picked up. Again, who was planning this mission?
Yeah, no.
Like they're specifically on a rescue mission, and they don't have enough fuel.
Yeah.
And also, they're not bringing back John, Robot John, who probably weighs like about 300 kilos, at least the same as Sherman and Kieran's put together. They're not bringing him back, so surely that saves them some weight. Anyway,
you would calculate in the return trip with extra people if you were optimistic, right?
Absolutely, and they've got Space Station Texas as well for refueling, so they only have to get to there. Anyway, they have to lighten the ship because just as they're getting ready, there's a flash flood. The ground is cracking open. The mermaids find Robot John covered in barnacles. I don't know if there's been like a gap in time, but they call on their god, which also makes no sense because their god has been killed. It's the pterosaur. But they call on their god to make it rain, which it does. And so everyone's kind of going a bit crazy because they're trying to get into the rocket ship, but they've got to lighten it. And everything's kind of flooding and cracking. Yeah, and at some point, Andre, the one that's kind of talked about hearing the voices of the women, and we at no point do we hear the women singing, or see them singing. Sorry, we hear them all the time, but no point do we see them singing. While they're unloading the ship of every kind of bit of extra weight, they unload looks like an oven, which is shut, and Andre wants to open it. I don't know why, but he can't. So he uses the special rock that he found earlier and kind of bashes it a bit to open it. And while he's bashing it, the rock cracks open and reveals a beautiful face in the special hat that the prehistoric women were wearing earlier. So it's got a hidden sculpture inside. And then everyone takes off. And so the Earth people make it back. The prehistoric women of Venus start throwing stones at their old pterosaur statue because they realize religion is a sham and the spaceship was stronger than their god. And so instead they take John the robot and install him as a new god and start to worship him. So, I mean, yeah, very Soviet
it's super harsh
in its outlook towards religion.
Like he made a storm from them at a volcano, and then they were just like, no, that's not good enough.
Absolutely.
Although I think it was
made a storm and a volcano for them, but they decide not to believe in him.
I think it was their telepathic powers that did it. When women get together in a group like that and we really set our mind to something.
Yeah. Women supporting women. That's what it's all about. And here we have a conundrum. Does this film pass the Bechdel test? Considering none of the women actually speak, but they telepathically talk to each other.
But do they talk about anything that's not a man? Yeah,
they talk about their summoning their god, who presumably is a gender-neutral pterosaur.
Yeah, then I guess it does.
But yeah, it was very crappy, this film, but I still enjoyed it. I didn't speed it up at all. Although it did drag in a lot of places. I just loved the kind of 1950s, early 1960s sci-fi aesthetic of, in the distant future of 1998, we'll be on multiple planets and be killing mini Godzillas and getting attacked by tentacle plants. I miss that optimism.
I think the original Russian Planet of Storms is probably a pretty interesting movie because all the really cool stuff, like all the goofy aliens and the rockets and the space car, those things are all pretty cool, and those are all from the original Russian one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we have a lot to say about prehistory in this, so let's start with this concept that, we have kind of touched on a movie like this before, but we have a lot of movies on our list where people travel in a futuristic sci-fi movie to a planet that is somehow prehistoric despite being in the future. So we've got this one. We've got the ones we already mentioned. We have Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, which is cut from the same original Russian movie. We have Women of the Prehistoric Planet from 1966, which I think is a totally different movie. We've got a few others on our list here. There's one called Your Hunter from the Future. I'm not really too sure what that one's about, but there are UFOs on the cover art on Letterboxd. We've watched one already that has a similar vibe called Teenage Caveman, if you remember that one. Spoilers for that one, but it turns out they weren't cavemen all along. They were in a distant post-apocalyptic future. That one was a Roger Corman movie, and I think Roger Corman is the executive producer on this one as well, so we can see this connection. And then we've got more modern, sort of retro-style movies. So there's a few I added to our list not too long ago. One of them is called Cave Women on Mars from 2008, and there's one called Saturnalia from 2022. So these are modern movies doing like a retro throwback vibe, but still focusing on cave people on a different planet, and a lot of them focusing on women, female cave people on different planets in the retro sci-fi future. So what's the deal with this concept? Do we have any thoughts about it?
It feels like it's just an excuse to get scantily clad women into the film. There's nothing prehistoric about these women at all.
No.
They're telepathic. They wear trousers and shell bras.
Yeah.
They can summon volcanoes and flash floods and earthquakes. Yeah, they live under the sea, it seems, at some point. At no point is it explained why they were living under the sea, where their men have gone. That's never
They may have
explained.
never needed it. I mean, they're not Homo sapiens, right? So it might just be,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe they're parthenogenetic or something.
Yeah.
Asexual.
Yeah.
But no, it very much feels like it's just a way to like round up a bunch of very attractive women and put them into not very many clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is explicitly the point of this movie, because they were recutting an old Russian movie and the producer said, get more scantily clad women into this movie. So that is the entire point.
Otherwise, they'd have to do like spacesuits, and that just covers a lot, right? Even if they're super tight. Skinny tight.
It's also budget cost. You're right, Kim. It's much cheaper to just put them in trousers and a shell bikini than it would be to like paint them green or give them like a spacesuit of their own. The budget only stretches to the men's spacesuits. The women are not allowed to have spacesuits. It's also interesting that at no point in this film do any of the astronauts actually meet any of the prehistoric women.
No, they never meet them.
They can't because they were the male astronauts were filmed 6 years earlier in Russia.
Yeah, that will make it difficult. But they didn't even try to like sort of shoot them from behind, like just have some stand-ins. It was all, I guess, that kind of limiting factor forced them to be slightly more inventive. But I don't know if that was successful in the end.
Maybe one thing we can talk about is with all these futuristic movies where they go to a caveman planet or a prehistoric planet, it's this idea of linear evolution that we've seen before, right? Like the concept that a planet in the future can be prehistoric, even though that makes no logical sense whatsoever. It has to do with the idea that there is a linear evolution. So if you go to a planet where the origin of life was a few million years later, then it will look exactly like Earth did at the time of the dinosaurs, because it's going through exactly the same evolutionary stages. And of course, doesn't make any sense at all, because life will follow a completely different course, especially on a planet like Venus. Maybe we can just talk about space and planets to get some science in this episode, because Venus is a pretty interesting planet. Do we want to just talk about space for a while? Do we have anything else to talk about in terms of prehistory or cave people?
Does Venus have volcanoes?
Yeah, it's very active. It's also got massive, like it's like not somewhere you'd want to spend a holiday. It's like massively hot, like rock melting hot, full of sulfur dioxide clouds, sulfuric acid rain. Like it's often talked as an example of a runaway greenhouse effect. So like because the sulfur dioxide clouds that cover it are very insulating, it's just gotten really hot. So it's like got lots of lava and volcanic activity and stuff on the surface, but you would not be able to survive very long down there.
Yeah, the surface temperature is about 460 degrees Celsius, and the air pressure at the surface is like super heavy. The air pressure at the surface is about the same as the water pressure a kilometer deep in the ocean on Earth, which I was reading on Wikipedia this morning. Makes the atmosphere into a what's the word it used? A superfluid or something. The atmosphere is so dense that the distinction there's no phase difference between water and gas. So like the atmosphere is so dense and thick that water and gas become the same thing. As the pressure changes, you have a sort of continuous change between liquid and gas without any distinct phase difference. So completely inhospitable. The atmosphere is carbon dioxide. You have sulfuric acid rain. There's no water because of this runaway greenhouse effect. I think if it did have water oceans, they all like evaporated off. And tons of volcanic activity. The whole, it doesn't have plate tectonics, but instead the whole surface is continually remodeled by volcanic activity. So I think it's the hottest planet in the solar system. It's hotter than Mercury, even though Mercury is closer to the sun because of its very dense atmosphere with the greenhouse gases that keep the surface warmer than Mercury. But I was interested to discover that there is a planned probe to be sent to Venus, possibly this year, called Venus Life Finder. So they're planning a probe to Venus to leave possibly this year. Of course, it's been delayed already a few years, but possibly leaving as early as this summer. Looking for life in the atmosphere. So even though it seems really inhospitable to life on Earth, it's possible that it did have life in the past, and it's possible that there are still things living in the upper atmosphere where it's a little bit cooler and hospitable to life that might have evolved there, which would be very different from life on Earth.
And there have been probes sent in the past. I think the Soviet Union sent probes to Venus. Was it Mariner? I can't remember the name, but they have sent probes to the surface of Venus. That's how they kind of know quite a lot about it. Yeah,
the Soviet series of probes were called Venera, which is
Venera,
Russian for Venus.
Okay.
As early as 1962, early 1960s. So by the time this movie was made, they'd already had many probes sent to Venus. The first one just did a flyby. They actually lost control of it. It was supposed to crash into Venus, but they lost control of it along the way, and it flew within 100,000 kilometers. I can't remember which one. They had a series of them between the 60s and the 80s, but several of them did land on Venus, and the longest one lasted for about 2 hours before it was pretty much corroded by the atmosphere and became not functioning anymore. So they've never really planned for a long-term probe on Venus because nothing that we make on Earth can really last in the atmosphere there.
It's like in the Philippines. Everything here breaks and rusts and decays.
Yeah. Extreme temperatures, just everything turns into a puddle.
I had a pair of shoes once I wore out that just degraded as I was wearing them. By the time I got home, my soles were they were literally falling off. Just bits of fabric left.
Oh, God.
Nonetheless, there have been concepts for crewed missions to Venus. An interesting one would be a floating atmospheric station. Where, because the atmosphere is so dense, but if you're high up in the upper atmosphere above the clouds, that's one of the things about Venus is you can't see the surface from with the naked eye because the entire planet is constantly covered in a layer of clouds. But you could have a floating station high above the clouds in the upper atmosphere, so you could have a crew living on a station, I don't know if this would be helium or something, but something that would float in the upper atmosphere where the pressure is lower, so humans could survive there, and then you could study the planet from the way up in the atmosphere. Probably not something that's going to happen anytime soon, I imagine. One of the interesting things in the movie, which we obviously have to thank the original Russian film for, is the actual space travel to Venus. They do it pretty interesting because they use a rocket to get out of Earth's atmosphere, but then they go to a space station, which I think is orbiting the moon, possibly, for refueling. Which is pretty realistic. That's how we're planning to get to Mars, I think, right? That's why we're going back to the moon now, so we can build a moon base as a waypoint for a Mars mission. Mm-hmm. Because the hardest part of traveling anywhere in space is getting away from Earth's gravity. You have to have so much fuel to get out of Earth's gravity. That's why all these, these spaceships that orbit the Earth or that are going to the moon these days are huge rockets, but then they drop all of those rocket boosters and the actual spaceship that's flying through space is tiny. So they use their rocket to get out of Earth's atmosphere, and then they stop at this space station, Texas, and refuel, and then they use that fuel to go to Venus. So that's pretty realistic, I think. I think that's pretty good for a sci-fi 1960s sci-fi mission to Venus.
Yeah.
I did like the kind of rocket designs and the space station designs. And the space car. Space car was great.
Yeah, space car's pretty cool.
My favorite part was when they got on to John and the guy sitting on his shoulder just very like slowly and daintily crossed his leg. So he was sitting like just so nice on John's shoulder. That was really sweet.
They look so funny sitting on this giant robot's shoulders so casually. He's like walking through lava and they're just pretty casual about it. Ross, you talked about Asimov's Laws of Robotics, which would have already been published by the time this movie came out for like 20 years or more, right? So the idea that the robot has this self-preservation circuit that is going to sacrifice humans is funny. But that makes me think about the problem with self-driving cars that hopefully we have mostly sorted out, because I'm seeing lots and lots of Teslas on the roads these days. So hopefully they're figuring out that problem. But do you guys familiar with like the current real life trolley problem of self-driving cars?
Yeah, it's very much, I don't feel comfortable outsourcing these very kind of complicated philosophical decisions to tech bros.
Yeah.
I read a book too by John Mars. It was really good. It was these hackers hacked into 10 of these self-driving cars and took over, locked the passengers in, and then they made it so that all the cars were driving to one central location. They were going to crash, and then the government had to do some kind of thing to stop the crash.
Fictional.
Yeah.
This is a novel.
Yes. It was scary.
I mean, it sounds like a real story. There was a news story the other day about Waymo, which I think are kind of driverless taxis in the States. They got stuck in some kind of decision loop at a road crossing and just started piling up. There was like 2 or 3 of them just blocking a turning at this road, and no one could get past them because they were kind of indicating and waiting for the light to change, but they just never went. So they're not fully there yet, and I shudder to think what kind of decisions would be made if they were hurtling towards, some nuns out with a nursery school on their way to meet some Nobel laureates or something. How would it stop that?
Well, the interesting thing about self-driving cars is that when it comes down to like an actually, potentially dangerous situation, they are way safer than humans because their reaction time is way faster. So for people who are worried about self-driving cars, crashing into you or something, certainly in the future, everyone's going to have a self-driving car, and we're going to look back on this time when we were physically driving our own cars and think about it like the way we were driving cars in the 1960s without seatbelts, with these, all these songs from the 1960s about kids dying in car wrecks because cars were so dangerous, right? So they are very, very safe. There's bugs where they're piling up at a stop sign and causing a traffic jam like you talk about, but people aren't dying in that, right? But the interesting trolley problem aspect of it is that
blocks an ambulance.
Sure, yeah, that's a good point. But the interesting trolley problem aspect of it is that if there is a situation where, you have 2 options and both of them are going to hurt somebody, how does it make that decision, right? So like you can have a child run into the street and the car will be able to stop and not hit the child, but maybe that the option is to turn into an obstacle which will damage the car and possibly hurt the driver. So, that's the trolley problem of it. And the car will make that decision flawlessly, but the decision has to be programmed into it. And so the idea is that if you are programming the car, do you program the car to sacrifice the driver to save the pedestrian, or do you program the car to save the driver at all costs if it requires sacrificing a pedestrian. And that's where it gets questionable, because it's the tech bros who are programming the answer to that trolley problem. Right. And one of the arguments I've heard that, because we can make the decision about what's the best way to solve that trolley problem and then program it into the car, and the car will execute it flawlessly. But nobody's going to buy a car knowing that it's programmed to sacrifice their life to save a pedestrian. So there's this perverse motivation where if every company says, okay, we'll program the cars to never hit pedestrians, then one company says, actually, we'll program our car to save the life of the driver at all costs. Everybody's going to buy the car that saves their life every time, right? So it's a very interesting philosophical question that, unusually for philosophical questions, has very real world implications.
It's just like, that's such a fundamentally moral and situational, contextual choice that you would make in a split second, and then to outsource that to a robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's different. Like if I was driving and Elon Musk was walking, I would save myself. But
maybe we can get self-driving cars with sort of like customization features, so you can program into it who to save and who to kill.
Yeah. But if it was school children,
I'm never driving with you guys.
I would kill myself. Yeah.
And also the idea that the worst people around at the moment are the ones that are programming these things.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't sit right. Just get a bike. That's the answer.
So, like,
an e-bike, a self-driving e-bike.
Yeah, that would be
just a bike that requires no fossil fuels, that you cycle yourself.
I agree. Bikes are great. When I was a bicycle courier on my Canadian taxes, I could actually claim meals as a fuel expense on days when I was couriering.
Nice. That's true.
Great.
I made about $3,000 a year couriering, so it's not like I was paying taxes anyway.
I like how we started with a movie of the Planet of Prehistoric Women, and now we're on self-driving cars and moral dilemmas of the trolley question.
And how to save tax money as a courier in Canada.
Well, the courier industry is dead, so nobody's a courier anymore. The lawyers just send everything by email. Everything was lawyers and architects, but you don't need anything on paper anymore anyway, so.
Now you have to deliver food and stuff. Milkshakes at 3 in the morning.
The robots are doing that.
Yeah.
Well, have we squeezed everything we can out of this movie?
I think so. Sorry, there wasn't very much in it. I was hoping it just I obviously chose the title, and then I saw that I could get access to it, and it was short. And then I looked and saw shell bras, and I was like, okay, I'm sure there's something.
When you sent that email, I was directly in the process of doing exactly the same thing, looking for videos I could find for free on short notice on YouTube, and I had a list of a few, and so the option I was going to send would be the Archies in Jugman, which is basically Archie Comics Encino Man, and I think we would have had about as much to say about that one, so maybe we can do that one in the future.
Yeah.
Do you have questions, comments, or movie requests? We want to hear from you. Find us on Blue Sky and Facebook at SOTSA Podcast. Send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com or visit our website at screensofthestoneage.com.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.